Hi, my name is Matt Hindra. I'm one of the founders of USA Warrior Stories. We are a non-for-profit organization that records, archives, and shares stories of veterans so that we can all better understand what veterans go through in their time of service and sometimes after their time of service. What you're about to see is a recap of a workshop that we did over Zoom on April 11th, 2020. And unfortunately, the beginning of the workshop got cut off a little bit. So I just wanted to say that. And right now, I'm going to introduce Nick Krause. Nick Krause is my co founder in USA Warrior Stories. And we basically started this project because Nick was one of the founders of a project called Soldier Ride with the Wounded Warrior Project, and Nick asked me to help him produce a documentary. We did that documentary a few years ago, and that led us into doing other veteran stories that eventually led into this archive. This workshop really is about teaching veterans and people who are interested in recording veterans to do those stories over things like Skype, Zoom, FaceTime maybe. So let me introduce Nick, and going to jump right to the workshop. And Nick is going to do his introduction of what people saw at the workshop. I hope you enjoy this, and at the end of this, you'll see some information about how to contact us. Thank you very much.
But one of the takeaways when Matt and I produced and put together the story of Soldier Ride called Welcome to Soldier Ride, which I think will be available again soon on Amazon Prime, was that there were so many stories that we had heard and captured, but we couldn't fit in the movie because it just didn't play into the story that we were trying to tell. And we also realized what a healing experience it would be for people to be able to tell their own stories, to get things off their chest, to be able to realize that they're not alone by sharing those stories. And then the other thing that we noticed on these soldier rides was that throughout the years, the ability that you could have in your cell phone was so much more than even on my $30,000 camera that I was using in 2003 with HD, this, that, editing capabilities. And so we realized that the power there was that you didn't have to actually leave your house, leave your family, leave the hospital to be able to get involved in something and to be able to share your story and to be able to network with other veterans by just even using your phone or a GoPro or whatever it might be. And so we started USA Warrior Stories. We've got over 100 so far, and now we're working on this remote edition to be able to do interviews remotely and also to teach folks and help them in the process of telling their story uh, themselves remotely. And Matt and Eric and Nick and Chris, they're all the experts on this more than I am as far as how to make that work. And later I'll be telling you some of the things not to do. But now I'll turn it back over to Matt.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks, Nick. That was great. Hopefully, everybody understands a little bit more about how we got started here. One of the things I want everybody to understand is that we don't work alone. We have a staff that works with us. Most of us aren't military veterans. Jay Lawrence, who's here with us today, is a 21-year veteran in the Army, and also runs a public access television show, Combat Zone 360, and has his own non-for-profit where he interviews and shares interviews of warriors around the New York area. Nick Letcher's here. Nick is one of our editors. Eric Lombard is one of our editors. Donna and Ross Rollinson are producers down in Florida. And that being said, when we work with veterans, we find that we want it to be a collaboration. And by that, I mean, we can interview you and we can record your story, but without your input of helping us with stuff with your story, the story doesn't really work. And like, for instance, we can, a lot of times we'll go to a place and we'll record some veteran stories, like we did with Jay recently on Staten Island, or Ross and Donna have interviewed some people down in Florida, and so that's one way of doing it. But in the times that we live in now, we're trying to find out if we can do this thing over Skype or FaceTime or even Zoom like we're doing now. We can record these things and see if that all works out. Now, after the recording is done, we will follow back with you, and the things we'll ask you for is we're going to ask you for some photos, to supply some photos of your time in service. Maybe it's a photo of you in uniform, in your dress uniform, Maybe it's just a photo of you that, when you were out doing your job. Um, Sometimes we have brothers who served in the military together, and we might ask you for some photos of your siblings who served or your family, or just some photos of you in the places that you served, doing your job out in the field. And all this helps us make a better story about, from your story. It helps us edit it into something that is more watchable for people out there. We also may ask, maybe you were stationed on a ship, things like that. Now, the other thing we talk about in our interviews is we talk about personal things that you do to help your recovery. Maybe you have PTSD, maybe you have issues after service or service-related issues. So we may ask you for some photographs or some videos of those things. Maybe you're an artist and your art helps you get through your PTSD, or maybe you're a poet and you write poetry about your time in service, or maybe you work with a group and you exercise, you work out, and you talk about your issues that way when you're working out. We take those photos and we add in maybe some historic photos of your time in service. This is a photo of the Tuskegee Airmen, um, or we could find some stock images online. We have a multitude of stock image houses that we use to just help make the videos that much better, and help it a little more to be a little more watchable for people when they're doing these things. So these are all the things we ask from you, the veteran who's going to, that we're going to interview. So when we contact you and we do this interview, we want you to interact with us and help us make your interview better. The other thing that we do is we are able to go on the internet and find pieces of stock footage, maybe, that would help help you with your time in service. This is some World War II footage that we've used in one or two of our interviews, and most of this stuff is either supplied by U.S. Military institutions and/or the Library of Congress, things like that. So it just sort of helps make the story that much more interesting, and helps us make you look better, makes the story look better, all those things. Today, I want to talk a little bit about this idea of using Skype, FaceTime, or Zoom to interact with veterans and record veteran stories. Whether you're a veteran who would like their story recorded, and we could set that up and have one of our staff members contact you and record your story remotely, or even hopefully when this whole pandemic is over, we could go and visit you in person and do an interview with you that way. We always ask little things like those images of you. Uh, when we're doing these things remotely, I want you to all be aware of the fact that you are on camera when you're doing these interviews. And for instance, if I move the camera and it's like this, that's not a very good shot for an interview. So just be aware of that. Or if I move like this, that might show off my logo well, but it doesn't really show anything else. So we're probably going to ask you to reposition the camera, and that way you sort of look as good as you can look. At this point, what I would like to do is talk a little bit about this idea of, if maybe you're not interested in having one of us do the interview and record your story, but you'd like to still record your story and send it to us, and then we could take your story and add those photos, those stock images to the story, and get it into our archive. I don't know if we all have these things, but they're pretty common nowadays, having a smartphone, and you can turn the camera on yourself and hit record and start talking to the camera. What we can do is we can send you a list of questions to help get you started, so that the interview has some kind of flow. And the questions are things like your background, you know, a little bit about where you grew up, if anybody in your family was in the military, things like that. So you could record your own story and just send it to us. Or you could have somebody, have a friend help you record the story, you know, so that they set up the camera nicely, you look nice, you sound nice, all those things. Again, we could send a list of questions to help get you started. And then you could, we could send you a Dropbox link, and you could Dropbox those videos to us, along with some images of those stock images of yourself and maybe your dress uniform, maybe your, you know, in your time of service, a few things like that. So those are all kind of things that we want to have people do. We want you to go away thinking that, you know, maybe you could do this. You could record some other veterans. You could help veterans record themselves. You could record yourself, send the image to us. At, at, at this point, I want to introduce, just in a second, I'm going to introduce Eric Lombard. He's one of the people we work with. And maybe Eric has a little tripod with a camera or something set up on it to show people how that is. But basically, we have these little kits set up, and they're little tripods, and on the tripod is a little mount where you can actually mount your camera. So you can flip it out, and then that helps you set up your shot. So then you have your camera there with your shot, and you're not resting it on a shelf, or you're not resting it somewhere, but you can see yourself and see that you look good. Or you could see the person that you're recording and see that they look good. And if you're in need of one of these tripods, we'll get one out to you. All we ask of you is that you use it. You record your story, you send it to us, and when you're done with it, you can send it back to us. We'll pay for it to come back to us, or you could hand it off to another veteran that you think would be interested in telling their story. All right, Eric. So Eric, why don't you show your little rig that you have to everybody?
Well, I've got a couple of different rigs, but certainly the simplest one is much like your tripod, the one that people can get. Now, if they've already got a tripod, they can simply buy for like $8 one of these little adapters, which can go right on the top of a tripod that you might already own, something like this. And the camera can just mount right on top of it like that. Now, the only thing, perhaps I should show the mic hookup.
Yeah, we could definitely talk about some issues with microphones. We want to also make sure that everybody has good sound when they're doing these things. So what kind of microphone do you have, Eric?
Well, I've got a few different microphones. The simplest thing, I think, for people that are going to be recording at home is to buy a simple lavalier microphone, something like this. Or we could send this as part of the kit.
Correct.
It's a type of microphone that you pin on yourself or the person that is being interviewed, like that. It has a wire that runs, and you plug it into the camera. Lots of Android, and it just has a plug like this. You do need to notice that it has a 3-ring plug versus a 2-ring plug, made for smartphones. A lot of the Android phones, they still have a headphone jack or mic input, which you can plug this directly into the phone. For the iPhones, the later and older iPhones, you'll require the little dongle that you got with the phone, or you can buy again at the Apple store for about $10, I think. The microphone plugs into there and plugs in then to your camera. And then when you're recording, actually put the microphone someplace here, and you're set to go. When you're recording, just a few tips there. Need to find a quiet location, because you know, you're not going to want to have background noise in the middle of your recording. Also, it's real important not to record with music in the background. It becomes very difficult to edit your piece if there are different types of music playing in the background throughout the piece. It's difficult to edit. So it should be a nice, quiet place. Lighting, something with an even light, is very nice. A little sunlight coming through the window from the side is good. That's great. What you want to avoid though, is having your back to the window. Because if you're like this, then your face starts getting to be in shadow. I don't show that as well as I could, but something like that. So you don't want to have a window behind you. That certainly helps a lot. The only thing is about the focusing. Perhaps I can just show the auto lock and focus.
If you want, Eric, we also have we have our breakdown of do's and don'ts if we want to sort of get into that now.
That'd be perfect. So
Okay.
I don't know if there's anything else I can actually show you. Now, sometimes if you don't want to use a lav microphone, you can use one of the shotgun's microphones. And I thought, now Matt has one. There are lots of different kinds. Some are like this, which basically get attached to the phone, and you can just have a cable that runs in and plugs them in. Some attach directly to the phone. Can you see that? Attached directly to the phone's input, or you might even get sort of a more elaborate shotgun microphone like this. You can mount on the top and plugs into your camera and gives you a really good sound about 3 or 4 feet away. Okay, take it away.
Thanks, Eric. So just to talk a little bit more about what Eric was saying, we're going to go over some of the proper filming techniques that we recommend. We basically what I call this is the do's and don'ts of using your smartphone when you're shooting. The number one thing we recommend is that you don't orientate your phone in what's called portrait mode. We want it to be put in what's called landscape mode. So if you're, shooting and your phone is like this, you're going to get that elongated portrait mode. What we recommend is you set your phone up like this so that it has a landscape mode, and it's more natural, like you're watching television. And again, if you need a tripod to help you with that, that does help, because once you mount this on, it stays and it's in that proper position for you, which is great. The second thing is again, we would like you to use a tripod. Set the tripod up and make sure that you have a nice background behind the person, and make sure that the camera and tripod are close enough to your subject. If you could see, I don't know how well you guys can see this, but when you use the digital zoom, when you zoom in with these cameras, a lot of times it gets pixelated like this image on the left. And what you want to do is then move the tripod closer to your subject or to yourself so that you're looking as good as possible, or your subject is looking as good as possible. Again, nice framing. Try to pick a nice backdrop where you could sit and do the interviews. We also have mounts for iPads. This is an iPad mount, and Samsung devices and anything like that. We just need to know which type of device you're going to be using. Eric mentioned a little bit about what's called backlight. What you want to do is make sure that you're not sitting in front of a window and having the window behind you. Because then you wind up being this sort of darkened person in the picture with this silhouette around you. That's something that you don't want. The other thing, kind of microphone Eric was talking about is external microphone, what's called a shotgun microphone. And on my Motorola phone, actually, the device, you just take it and it literally just plugs right into where you would plug your phone in to be charged. So then it sticks right in there, and then you have a cleaner audio for your recording. And what's also nice with this is it's got a little headphone jack, so you can also listen in on how your recording sounds, and you know that it's recording properly. We can get you one if you're interested in helping us with this project, interested in telling your story or telling someone else's story. Now, if for some reason none of these devices are available, one of the things that we recommend is you can always use earbuds. As both a microphone and headphones. So once you put the earbuds in, whether they are wireless Bluetooth earphones or hardwired headphones, as you notice, Eric pointed out before that the hardwired ones have 3 rings, not 2. The third ring allows it to connect to the smartphone and allows to record the sound that you'll be recording. So that's something, if you don't have a microphone readily available and you still want to start doing some interviews or interview yourself, you can put those devices in. We also recommend that you take your smartphone or tablet out of what's called the automatic mode. This allows so that the device doesn't go out of focus on you if you're recording, and also the exposure, which is the light that comes in and out of the device, isn't changing in the middle of the interview. And those are things, if you email us and you want a little further explanation about how those things work, depending on if you have an Apple device or an Android device, we can help you with that. Number one thing, once you start recording your interview, you want to make sure that your device is in airplane mode, because there's nothing worse than in the middle of the interview is if your phone rings and then all of a sudden you have to answer that phone call. And if you're really interested in recording other veteran stories, we recommend different apps for different devices. One of the things that we all like to use with the staff here is something that's called Filmic Pro. It's available at both the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. And this just makes it a little easier for you to do things like monitor the volume on your piece. If you look over to the right of the image shown, you'll see the volume levels. If you look just to the left of that, you'll see it has a zoom and a focus control. We don't recommend using the zoom, but you can use the focus to help focus your subject. And over on the left is the exposure, and that wheel helps you adjust the lighting and things like that, and also the color temperature or white balance of your picture. It just helps everything look a little better. This is one of the microphones Eric was showing. It's called the Lavalier Microphone. And basically what we need to know is what kind of phone you have, so we can recommend what kind of microphone that you're going to need to use. At this point, I'm going to just, let's see if I can unmute everybody. And if anybody has a question about what we're doing so far, please chime in.
I have a question pertaining to, I've done a lot of research on my father-in-law who has passed away. I've got pictures, I've got stories. He was a B-17 bomber. I have all his missions, all his crews, and actually kind of recreating a story of people who've actually passed away. I had him do a video of every medal he ever did, he won, and I put on top of it as the album cover the actual medal. So when it's on the computer, you tap the medal and it's his voice.
That's great.
And when he got it and all that.
That is really great, Ted. Thank you for that. That's amazing that you've done that. So what would you like to do with it?
Well, I think that I would probably like to sit down, restructure. I have so much information. I even have information on his uncle that was in World War I that I've researched all the battles and stuff like that. But his is a little bit further away. I have, there's videos that are available of the types of planes. I have pictures of the planes he flew. And I mean, I found it really interesting studying it, because I knew very little about the B-17 pilots and stuff like that.
That's great. So I guess what I would recommend, and again, we could talk about this, outside of this group, but I would recommend just making sure all of that stuff is in some kind of digital format. So if there are photographs, make sure they've been scanned and in your computer. and any video also is what's called digitized, and we have resources that can do that, and or we can maybe do it in my studio for you and get it to you, so all that stuff is a little more organized.
Yeah, I ran
The family
the
discount.
computer. I ran the computer school in the Marine Corps, and then I ran the California Department of Corrections data center for 10 years. So believe me, everything's digital.
That's fantastic. So that's good. And then the other thing too is to because they're no longer with us, is to maybe do some kind of voiceover script, of the career. You get that together and time it out. Have an idea of how long you want this to be. If you want it to be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20
Right.
minutes, just work that out so that way it'll help you structure things.
Yeah, I sat down with him and I had him write down all the training he had done. What was his biggest event? Who was his best friend? What was his, the things that he feared the most? And so there's a lot of stuff. But I was just wondering if you were if something like that could be done about somebody who's already passed away.
I don't see why not. I think that you as a family member could present that to us, and we would help you put it together.
Okay.
I would say get Joan to do the voiceover since it was her father and she's actually a veteran herself.
Yeah.
That's great. One of the first questions we ask when we sit down with veterans is I like to know if there's a history of veterans in the family, because I find that there's a lot of connections in veterans' families, and a lot of times the vet is not the first one that is joined up and served.
I tell everyone that Joan graduated in the last Women's Army Corps WAC class ever to graduate.
Wow.
And she hates it when I tell everybody because she says, you're just telling them how old I am.
Right, yeah, of course.
That's my stepmother.
Okay. So anybody else have any other questions or comments or things that you're thinking about working on?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Donna.
The stuff that you showed, is it possible you could email it to us, like the slides and stuff?
Yes, I have
PowerPoint?
a PDF of what we talked about today, and I'll email that to everyone.
Okay.
At the end of this, I'm going to put up a slate which has our email and our website. All I ask is that you email me first to let me know that you want that material or you want some additional information, and we'll get that out to you. Okay.
Okay.
I see Jez joined in. Jez is Royal Marine from England, and we're reaching out also to our coalition veterans to maybe do some stories on our website. Hi, Jez. How are you today?
Evening, Matty. Evening, gang. Everybody okay, I hope?
Hello.
Hey, Jess.
We're here,
Hi.
so.
Always a bonus.
What I'm going to do now is a lot of people ask, well, what do we do with these videos, and what makes our project a little different than other veterans projects that are out there recording and telling stories? One of the things that Nick Krause and I from the get-go have wanted to do was to make our website be as user-friendly as possible. And here is, let me get this up for you. Hopefully, can you guys all see our website now?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. So here is our website. Every month we have a spotlight story on the website, and we also share our latest stories that we've done that month. And we also have a featured story selection, which is, obviously this month is the 75th anniversary of the Battle of Okinawa, and so we have some stories in our archive of men who were there. You can go to our website and visit those stories, view those stories, and also we have things that are sort of coming soon, stories we're working on. We're always working on something, but basically every month we change the homepage of our site, so there's always different stories on it. And we've also created a search engine on the site. If you look over in the right-hand column over here, you can search by branch of service. You could actually search by, we have quite a few D-Day people in our archive. You could type in D-Day and find that. But we also have a drop-down menu, which allows you to search by branch of service, conflict, and these things are constantly changing. For instance, recently we had a merchant marine story, and so we decided that we would put a category on our website for merchant marines. Also, by conflict. So you could, if you're interested in World War II history or Vietnam, there's a list of conflicts. And again, these keep changing because people come to me, and I had recently someone said to me that the Iraq War should actually be 2 wars. So those are things we think about, and if we feel like there's a reason for changing that on the site, we'll do it. We love input from everybody. One of the things I showed the guys, my staff yesterday, was we recently got input on this particular story, which the person who called said we had a date wrong, and when I looked at it, the person was correct. And they also sent us this nice photo, which was a memorial to the men who served in the Merchant Marines. So these are all things like if any of you out there have things that you think we should add to a story that's in here, that we would appreciate getting that. Each veteran story is designed out to what's called a blog page, and we can add things to the stories. So we could add some photographs to the stories. Let me double back here, just because I know that this gentleman who was at Pearl Harbor also had another interview done at some point, and we added a link to that interview that he did, some personal photographs. So these are all the things that we can add and build out on each one of these personal pages that we've set up for these veterans. Something that we're working on now, because we realize that there's a need for there's a need for some of our veterans to either be closed captioned, or we have people out there that maybe are hearing impaired. So we're starting to add closed captionings to our website, things like that. So these are all things that we're doing as time goes on, to make all these things better and more user-friendly for people. And this is all done through our non-for-profit. Nick Krause is amazing. He does a lot of our fundraising, most of our fundraising, really. And that allows us to be able to reach out to organizations that do closed captioning, reach out to veterans organizations to do workshops like this, and to also set up equipment that we can send out to people to get that done. So that's just one of the things we do. Once a story is finished, we also promote it on our Facebook page and the social media. So on our Facebook page, currently we would have pinned to the top one of our more recent stories, and then what we've been doing recently is just since the beginning of us all being locked down, we decided to do a program called 30 Days, 30 Stories, which every day we're highlighting another story on our website, getting it out there for people to see, and just sort of trying to keep people engaged and learning about what we're doing, So we do spend a little bit of money promoting and advertising these things to try and get some of a bigger reach out to people. And as you can see, we get quite a lot of comments back and forth from people. I recently got a comment from a veteran, and their comment was that their father-in-law had passed away on a certain date on a certain mission. This was the photograph he sent, and on the anniversary of that of this soldier's death, we posted that with a little memorial. So we try to keep people engaged every day and show them what we're doing. So after your story is recorded, this is what we do with it. We push it out there. We get people to know what our men and women in our armed forces, what their sacrifices are, what they went through. We also have a monthly newsletter, an e-newsletter that we send out to our supporters. Just sort of tells us what we're up to. This was April's, and obviously we talked a little bit about what we're doing here today, and switching over to some of these FaceTime interviews. We also show what our spotlight story of the month is going to be, and maybe there's an anniversary that month of something that happened. Other things that are going on. The majority of our stories are also available on. You can watch them on your smart TV if you go to YouTube or Vimeo, and just search for the USA Warrior Stories channel. And we love to see our bumper stickers on cars, right, Nick?
Absolutely. And I meant to mention, Jez, if we do your story, you can have your own section.
That's right. You would be the first person in a coalition section. So we'll have to make sure that happens.
Okay, guys.
As far as recovering pictures,
What's that?
as far as recovering pictures, I recover pictures for genealogists.
Okay.
In other words, when they come in, they're all scratched up, bent, and all that, and I fix them up. Do you do some of that for the pictures that come in, or what type of quality do you have coming in?
Now that's interesting. We don't normally. Normally we just deal with what the person gave us. If there's a historic photograph, of an event, and we have that person's permission to maybe use that photograph again and again and again, we might take a little time to touch it up or do something with it. But my feeling is most of these interviews really speak for their own, and they're the warrior's story in his or her own words. We will occasionally find a newsreel, and for instance, we had a Vietnam veteran who talked specifically about a battle he was injured in, and I found a newsreel in the archives of his commander talking about that battle, and we did add some clips from that to his story. And that's something that we would do to sort of make the story a little pad the story out, or make it more historically relevant. So we do things like that if we can find them. But for the most part, it's the warrior's his or her story in his or her own words, with the photos that they've given us and a little salt and pepper that we can find in historic records, Library of Congress we go to, things like that. And occasionally we'll buy some stock footage from a stock footage house that we find that's relevant to a story.
My second question, I go visit the old folks' homes, and there's a lot of veterans in there that are bedridden.
Right.
They have their stories, which I share with them back and forth and stuff like that. How would you approach going into a senior citizen where they can't get out of bed to try to get their stories, where they may not the availability to get pictures? Would you actually try to find stock pictures to go with their story?
Correct. Yeah, we have a few veterans that had no images of their time in service. A Vietnam veteran who is my neighbor. I did his story recently, and he was so disgusted with his time in the military, he burnt everything. He had nothing. So we recorded his story, and he walked point with the dog in the Army, and we found some stock footage and talk about dramatic imagery of this a lone soldier walking on a road to make sure that it's not booby trapped and or they're going to be ambushed. And this was this gentleman's job. So we purchased that stock footage and added it in so that we could at least show what he did. It may not be him, but the imagery is correct. And everyone who participates in this, they'll have an opportunity to proof their video before it gets put into the archive. So if there's something that maybe we thought was appropriate, but the veteran doesn't believe is appropriate, we can have that conversation, remove it from it. Maybe there's something that we've forgotten in the initial interview that needed to be added in. In Donna's case, Donna's been with us on a few of these projects, and she's constantly, sends me things, and I add it and I update her story. If she's doing an event, she's also works for the Department of Mental Health here in New York. She's had a rough time with what's going on with the coronavirus. So I just did an interview with her the other day, which we're going to add into her story about what's been going on recently. So those are things we do. As far as going into a home, I would recommend if somebody's willing to go in and record the stories, I would recommend we'd get you a little microphone, go in with your camera, a tripod, and just start recording these stories. And then we'll put them together somehow, whether it's a group story, which we've done before, about an organization that maybe does things, and we could take all the men and women who are in this veterans home and maybe do a story about all of them and tell a little bit from here, a little bit from there. Or if there's enough for individual stories that are recorded, we would love to do that. Okay. And one of the reasons why we reach out to the public is we can't do it all, Sir, where do you live, sir?
Sacramento, California.
You're in Sacramento, California. If you have access to this home and your son's out there visiting, or you want to do it yourself,
I can't visit right now because of the age.
Of course, yeah. But maybe there's somebody that's already in the home who has a smartphone and they're interested, and we could get some equipment to that person, and they could start recording these stories. So we would love that.
Of them. They love to tell their stories. They're there all by themselves, and you just start talking, boy, and they'll go on for hours.
Gotcha. So those are the things we really recommend to do. I think at this point, what I'd like to do is I'm going to do a quick recap of what we did today for anybody who came in late, okay? And then I'm going to show, I have a little highlight reel of some of the stories we did, so you could see what we do with some of the imagery. And interviews, and then also I'm going to put up our contact information again, and I would love if everybody would send us an email and give us some feedback about what this is. And if you're interested in being recorded remotely, please let us know in that email, and we will hook you up with one of our staff members, whether it's myself or Jay or Ross and Donna down in Florida, whatever seems the most appropriate, and we'll get online and record the interview with you, okay? If you want to contact us, our contact info is info@usawarriorstories.org. This is our website. It's usawarriorstories.org. We are a non-for-profit, so we do all this. It doesn't cost anything to anyone who participates. Usually, like I said, we try to go out and interview the veterans either in their home or in a neutral place. But of course, with what's going on in the world, we can't really do that at the moment, and that's why we're reaching out to everybody to see if they would like to be interviewed on some kind of platform like Skype or Zoom or FaceTime. And if you email us, we will make that arrangement and send you an invitation so that we could set up that interview. What we ask from you, besides telling an amazing story, is to provide us with some documentation, some photographs of your time in the military. Maybe it's just a photo of you in your dress uniform or you doing your job. Occasionally we'll ask you for photos of your relatives, or, if you have some photos of the men and women you served with, or again, your job, or maybe a ship you served on. We would love to have any of that documentation so that we can make your story flow a little better and make it a little more watchable for the people that we share it with. Also in our interviews, we're going to ask you about what you do now in your life. Maybe some of you are having issues and you reach out to the arts. Maybe you're an artist and that helps you with your PTSD. It helps you do things. Maybe you're a writer, a poet, and you do public performances and that helps you with how you cope with things. You know, we have a lot of vets who are into exercise, working out, and they work out as a group. And then we take that stuff and we add it to historic photos that we may find of your time in service. Again, this is a photo of the Tuskegee Airmen, or some stock footage, military footage that's available at Library of Congress and things like that, that we'll find and add into your story. You can contact us, we'll set up an interview, or if you are interested in just maybe recording yourself and sending that recording to us, we could get you a tripod like you see here, and you could record yourself on your phone, or you could have a friend help record you, and then we'll send you a link to Dropbox and you can upload that video along with the photographs to help us edit your story and or videos. You know, we live in a time when maybe some of our veterans have some video of their time in service. You upload it to us and we will work with that. And if you're interested in recording yourself or other veterans, I will send you a PDF of this particular thing, which is basically the do's and don'ts of how to film your interview, and you know, and just follow through it and follow a couple little steps to help everything look a little better. You know, different microphones you can use. And again, if you're in a pinch, one of the best things that we have is the device we have already with earbuds, and a lot of these earbud devices have microphones built into them and you can record with that. And please remember to put your phone into airplane mode when you're recording. And if you get really serious about wanting to record interviews, we can help you find different apps that are available to make it look a little better, and all those things. And please, if you're interested in scheduling an interview with one of our interviewers, please email us at info@usawarriorstories.org, and we will make sure that one of our interviewers gets to you and sets up a time where you can be interviewed. That was the quick run through about what we did in this hour. Again, does anybody have any questions? I'll put up the email information again, and if anybody has any questions, let me know. But let me throw up the email information in case somebody needs to run and get a pen, write it down.
Matt, I had a question for you.
Shoot.
I talked about whether we're going to be able to record this or not, because a number of people actually have messaged me throughout this interview saying that they just couldn't do it timing-wise, but wanted to see what we did.
Sure.
So there was a link to this at one point. I'm sure we'd like to share it, and if anybody else would want to share it, if we do have that, maybe they could pass it along to some other folks. I know we'll be doing this again in the future, but I think this went really well, and thank you for putting it together today.
You're welcome. I did record it, so we'll do something with this, and we'll post it on our website.
My other question I had, which I text, if I'm providing pictures and there are other people in the pictures, do I have to get their permission before I submit that, seeing it maybe published on Facebook or other things?
That's a great question, and the real answer is I don't know. You know, we tend to what I say is that everything I've gotten that's in our stories is from the veteran themselves. If it's not, we put a little notation on it, you know, right, saying that this is from Library of Congress or this is from whatever, and I don't really look into those things.
Okay.
We have recently submitted a series of 10 episodes that we did, or 10 interviews we did, to Amazon, and I'm waiting to come see what they say. you know, because they may all of a sudden say, well, you need to have permission for all the people in these photographs. I don't really know, but
Okay.
we'll cross that bridge when it comes. You know,
Got
that's
it.
one of the things we're going to do. So everybody have our information that needed it?
Yeah, I'm sending you an email now.
Great, Tim. Thank you very much. What I'm gonna do is, as we, you know, you guys can either stay on or go away or whatever, but as I'm logging off, I'm gonna run our little video, which is highlights maybe 20 of the stories that we did. It runs about 5 minutes, and it shows you what we do with the videos once they're all edited and done. Again, anybody have any questions before I do that, or comments?
Matt,
Ross?
you didn't mention, but if anyone's going to try and work this out on their own with their smartphone, they should be shooting with HD 1080, not 4K, because it's going to use up so much space.
Yeah, well, it's one of the things is I'm hoping anybody who really wants to do interviews with their own phone and not over Skype, please contact us and we can give you our words of wisdom of all the mistakes that we've made so you don't have to make them again. You know, there's a reason why we've all been in the production business for all these years, is because we've made tons of mistakes and somehow survived through them.
I eventually became the poster child with an X through me of what not to do.
Right, or Nick. Yeah, exactly, which is good. And yeah, and I want to make sure that everyone gets these photos of Nick with his face in the red. Everybody should have a copy of Nick with his face X'd out.
Nick Krause, you are a beautiful man, though. Let's face it.
Thanks, Des.
Anyway, I hope everybody stays healthy. And we will take this and do a YouTube video with it. And I have a feeling, because we've been trying to do these workshops once a month, so we may, you know, the way things look, we may schedule another online one before we can do something again in person. So hopefully you could spread the word, and if you enjoyed what we did today, invite people to come. Okay.
Sounds good.
Nice one.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, let me see if I can remember to turn the computer sound on so you guys can see our little promo.
USA Warrior Stories is a not-for-profit organization designed to record, archive, and share videos of veteran stories, to help veterans make a connection with one another and to help us all better understand their sacrifices for our freedoms.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. What the hell is happening? The attack started about 7:55, and 2,300 servicemen got killed that day. We had no more chance than a snowball had in hell.
Boy, I'll tell you, we lost a whole generation and then some then. Talk about the greatest generation.
In 1969, I guess, I was in the under 100 club. I was drafted and my number was 99.
The worst day of my life when I got my draft notice. All of a sudden you're a college student and then you get your fucking draft notice.
I always knew I wanted to be in the Army. My father was in the Army. All of my uncles served at one point or another. When I got there, I felt like I was a round peg in a round hole.
The mission of all SEALs is to do whatever the commander tells you to do. In the Battle of Mogadishu, I was part of Task Force Ranger. I was one of 4 SEAL snipers. And at the time, President Clinton sent us in there, and we did our best, and it turned out to be a real shit show.
It's kind of weird, like it was in the movies, and like where you just get the, and like it looked like a missile had went off. Well, in all actuality, it was a suicide bomber that had drove into our front gate.
The most challenging thing, I believe, was going to the gas chamber. They have to remove the gas mask. They put the tear gas in. They want each soldier to say their name, rank, and social security number.
I know one time I had just landed, and then you pull up to the front of the ship, and a plane came in there, same type as I had. He got low out there and hit it's called the round down. It's the back end of it's the blunt end of that ship, and it broke in half.
It's, a very interesting job we do. We have the combat search and rescue mission. We go out and try to find anybody who's an isolated person or someone behind enemy lines. I've had quite a few stateside deployments as well. Most recently, I was in Texas for Hurricane Harvey.
When I was young, Vietnam started. While I was growing up, Vietnam was still going on. And when I was 18, Vietnam was still going on. So I decided instead of going to college that I would just try my hand in the Army.
People think about war casualties as soldiers. There's also a lot more people who are casualties. So this kid picks up an unexploded bomb and it goes off. By the time we got him, we had a 10-year-old kid with 99% third-degree burns.
I came over here to this country when I was 10 years old. I came from Central America, Nicaragua. There was a civil war going on. My aunt got killed, like in front of my grandmother, I guess. I believe the United States is the greatest country in the world. And when 9/11 happened, being in Staten Island and just, you know, watching, remembering that day, and like I wanted to go join like right away.
It's one of my favorite pieces, actually. So on the front here, you see all these firefighters and police officers that were part of the scene of what was going on. You'll see I use red in a lot of my paintings. Red is my way to express my anger. So I use, you know, my red to get my anger out of me and put it into my artwork.
There are a lot of struggles being a female in the military. There's 3 types of men in the Army. There's the kind that think, and we can all work together and be a team. There's the kind that thinks that you're there for one thing and one thing only. And then there's the kind that don't think you belong there at all because you're a woman.
I'm sure anyone that's been to Walter Reed can attest that it's a really powerful place. So I got there, I was 24 years old. I just lost one of my legs. It really puts things in perspective. So I felt pretty lucky early on that I had only lost my leg and I had my life. That I really felt like one of the lucky ones.
These are letters that I wrote to my wife. These are all letters while I was in the Marine Corps. I had no idea they saved them. So I started reading them, and something happened.
One day, I stepped outside on the deck, and when I went outside, my mind stayed inside. I actually lost my mind.
What used to be called shell shock, battle fatigue. It's PTSD, it's real, it's here, and it's not going away.
Freedom isn't free. You know, veterans pay a big price for it.
Eventually they put me onto a stretcher and they loaded me onto that helicopter and they gave me a salute. The biggest struggle wasn't physical for me, it was mental. It was trying to figure out, what do I do next? I'd lost my purpose in life.
You know, right now we're still kind of rolling on the high from being Paralympian and silver medalist, and so it's trying to settle back into normal life, if you will, and just go back to being me.
I think it's important that we have very smart, all races and creeds and diversity in our military, because it is a reflection of us. But at the same time, if we don't have that kind of individual that's willing to put their life on the line, we will not be the free country in the future that we are today. To search the USA Warrior Stories archive, view full stories, and learn more, visit usawarriorstories.org.